Hello, and you've just listened to Scooby-Doo and the Zombie Island Civil War. I am Ryan James Cheshire. I wrote and also read this audiobook. So, yeah, let's just have a little behind-the-scenes sort of talk about how this came into being. So, I was actually really excited for Scooby-Doo Return to Zombie Island. Even though I knew it would probably be a cash grab, I didn't think it would be nowhere near as bad as the film ended up being, and it kept trying to retcon the original film rather than pay tribute to it, and it just constantly kept doing references to it, and the references were really obvious as well, which is something I didn't want to do in my version, and my version only was made was basically because I was so annoyed about it. I mean, they had 21 years to come up with an idea for a sequel, and that's what they came up with. So I literally came up with the idea of mine and wrote the first draft of it in about an hour. That first draft, though, was obviously evolved and rewritten a couple of times since, which is what eventually came Scooby-Doo and the Zombie Island Civil War. An alternate title I was thinking of, Scooby-Doo and the Civil War on Zombie Island. But yeah, I didn't want to just call it, Scooby-Doo and Zombie Island fanfiction. I wanted to differentiate myself from it. So yeah. One of the things I wanted to do is keep the gang, aged up. I didn't want them to, go back to being teenagers, which, when you think about it, it's weird. They're adults in Zombie Island, and then they're teenagers again in Return. Yeah, it's weird, but in my version, they're adults in that, and it takes place, some X amount of time after the first film. And I wanted to do references to it, but without blatantly just saying, there's reference, this is a reference. So, for example, characters' names, and also the peppers and things on your house. But I never wanted to, stop the plot and say, hey, this is a reference. Everything I wanted to do was, had to be part of the plot. And also, I didn't want to waste a bunch of time, so that's why pretty much we go almost immediately in. Within the first 5 minutes, they're on Zombie Island and they discover Simone Lenoir's house, and I call her sometimes Simone Lenoir, and that is the only reason I call her that sometimes is basically Lenoir is difficult to say slowly. Basically, it's very difficult to say slowly, and it's not the easiest name for my tongue to say either, so I want to do that. But I wanted the monsters to be real in this. I didn't just want them to be, the same fake ones, and that's why I sort of got a little bit inspired away by the cat. Spoiler alert: the cat creature that was left at the end of Return to Zombie Island that never got an explanation for what it was or why it was there. So then I thought, well, what if it's a descendant of the originals, which is where the whole thing of Zombie Island and the Zombie Island Civil War came from, because I thought, well, what if there isn't just one group of cat creatures? What if there's two that are all descendants from the originals, and one lot of them, it is a curse, immortality is a curse. What if one of the groups have just decided, we've had enough of this, we don't want to do this anymore, and the other groups decide, no, we must, continue with this, who wants the immortality. A few things that came much later on in the game, and were added much later on, for example, the police officer, who doesn't actually have a name. He was literally added last minute in the final draft before recording. And the reason he was added is basically I was thinking of alternate ideas for a Zombie Island sequel at the time. And one of the ideas was that a person goes to the island and, tries to resurrect Simone and Lena, and also gain their immortality and become a cat creature themselves. So I kind of tried to work that into this one, since I didn't want to do another sequel after this. So I kind of worked that in a bit. Something that was always in there, and what helped connect it a bit more, was Detective Bo. who I added into this. And originally, in the first draft, he was literally just going to have a cameo where he would show up at the very, very end and just fly the gang off the island. That was, the extent of what he did in the original. And in the original, the gang, Scooby and Shaggy just distract the cat creatures for a little bit. And actually, no, in the original draft of the script, they lead the zombies in. That's enough to just scrap the cat creatures, and then they just crumble to dust. However, I read this out with my friend. He said, "Oh yeah, it's very good, but the ending's a bit anticlimactic." So I wanted the ending to be a bit, bolder and braver for it, and I also wanted to give, Shaggy and Scooby a bit of a heroic moment and acting. So what I decided to do was, first of all, have Scooby saving Shaggy by jumping on one of the cat creatures and knocking it to the ground, and then the two of them using pushing over the cat statue that's in the cave on top of Kevin, and then to have a big fiery finale. Have Detective Bo bring a bunch of explosives and set the whole thing alight. Yeah, and that was also a way of saying, yep, all the descendants, they're dead, and since, the underground cave is destroyed with the cat statue and everything, and the house is destroyed, that's it. That's the end of the curse. That is, the definitive ending for it. I also wanted to make sure, each of the members of the gang had, equal qualities in their own respective field. Velma, obviously, being the smart one, but also Zombie Island has probably my favourite incarnation of Daphne, in there being a lot more independent and having our own idea about things and able to spot things that maybe Velma and the others wouldn't in a different way. And Fred as well, from Zombie Island, was my favourite incarnation of Fred. And pretty much, to be honest, I kept his role quite down quite a lot in it, as in recent incarnations he'd become very trap obsessed, and the only thing that hints at that in this is the fact that he knows where the trapdoor is. He knows how to activate it. Since he knows about traps, that's it. You don't need to go on a whole massive obsession about it. Yeah. This thing was, just made out of a love for the original and the disappointment that the official sequel had. So I wanted to prove, mainly to myself more than anyone else, that I could do a better job at it. And something, I made sure to do is not to go darker in tone. In fact, my goal from the start was to match the tone of the originals. There's a couple of little bits in that may go slightly darker. But other than that, I try and match the tone of the original, not go... Because the temptation was, to just go as dark as possible. But I decided not to. I decided I'm just going to, try and keep it consistent that to the original, to feel like, this actually could be a sequel to it. And I have enjoyed writing it, and I have enjoyed recording it and making it. It's taken me just under 2 weeks, I think, to complete. Actually, no, less than that, a week and a half to complete at the time of recording. So that was coming up with the first ideas to writing the drafts and eventually recording it and editing it. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and I certainly enjoyed making it.